right, so this is the 2022 contest report. Just a very brief historic perspective. We have the number of categories and number of winners and submissions here. We always had 4 categories during the last few years. This will change for the next year, but we'll come to that later. We have a list of all the winners from all the years. You can try to find your names there if you want at some point, but at this point, everything is getting so small that it's hard to see. But also you can find the list of winners on the website. This year again, as always in the last few years, we had 2 creative topics and we had the live challenge. The creative topics were an opera network. You were supposed to draw a graph that represents a collection of opera performances, and the aesthetic experiences graph that visualizes a data set for 8 networks. And it measures what kind of feelings people were feeling when looking at the artworks. In the live challenge, the task was to get a planar polyline drawing that minimizes the edge length ratio on the grid. And we had again split it into the manual category, where you're only allowed to use a provided tool, and the automatic category, where you can use anything that you want. For the opera network, we had 8 submissions. That's a very good number. Unfortunately, for the aesthetic experiences, there was only 1 submission. In the manual category, oh, this is not updated yet. There were 10 submissions, and in the automatic there were 6. Those numbers are not yet correct. This is a bit sad. Last year we had 1 category where we had 0 submissions, so it got better. We got 1, but still for a contest, it's not so great to only have a single submission, because it's automatically the best and the worst at the same time. We can split again by countries. We had submissions from 8 different countries. Germany, Austria, Canada, Netherlands, France, Greece, Italy, and Japan. And as most years, the most submissions were from Germany and Austria. And most of those were from Tübingen and from Vienna. But I'm happy that we also got submissions from many other countries. We start with creative topics. The aesthetic experience network, we gave you 8 networks, and each of them gave you basically a complete graph. And it was about 8 different artworks. We had different kinds of feelings that were captured. And every vertex was one of 2 polarities of an aesthetic effect, for example, sad or happy. And the edges were weighted and told you what is the interaction between those feelings. And in this category, we had 8 graphs, each 14 vertices, and we had 1 submission. So this submission automatically wins the first place. Congratulations to Axel Kuckuck, Henry Förster, and Sarah Gerster from University of Tübingen. But although this was an automatic win, I'm still happy that I actually like the drawing. So it's not something terrible. And I especially we like that this looks like you hang some drawings onto the wall. And it even tells you, yeah, this is a painting. This is done by printer toner on paper. And yeah, the meta level was pretty cool. If you invest some time, you can read some stuff from it. Although the different graphs look quite basic, there's a lot of information encoded in it. Let's move to the opera network. Here it gets a bit more exciting. We had a collection of opera performances across Europe between 1775 and 1833. In total, 201 performances. For each of them, we had the performance title, the librettist's name, the composer's name, and the performance year, and the city in which the performance took place. And we gave you just this data and told you, do whatever you like with it. You can create whatever graph you want. So the types of visualizations we got were quite different. These are the 8 visualizations. They are also all on the website. You can look at them there in detail. 5 of them we also printed as a poster and put them here in the poster session. So I will now present you first the 4th places. There are 5 fourth places. One of them is by Anita Topik, Fabian Obermann, and René Holzer from TU Wien. And we really like that they used a grid here, so it's quite novel. Yeah, the implementation, it's a bit hard to read because of the colors, but overall the drawing looks quite pretty. The next 4th place is by Daniel Herczek, Sonja Clement, Adrian Schmidt, also from TU Wien. And this is a very nice circular layout, and it looks, if you're standing in front of it, it looks really amazing. The only problem is that it's not really space efficient. And again, you have to reference between the colors and the legend a lot. So it's a bit hard to read. That's why a few other posters were slightly better. The next 4th place, Long Nguyen, Ricarda Hogel, Ngok Fifung, Leo Valentin Desani, and Paul Fischer from University of Tübingen. And yeah, here the aesthetic is really cool. We like that they separated it into 4 different periods. So they don't use a single drawing, but 4 different drawings. That's what nobody else did. And yeah, we really liked it. Again, the readability is a bit hard because of the separation and the color coding. But this is something that everybody struggles with because the network is so large and there is so much information. We have submission from Hedde van Heerde, Harpreet Kaur, and Thomas Hietkamp from Utrecht University. And this is actually a tool. The link is down here. So you can look at it on the web, and then you can mouse over all those circles here and you get additional information. And the tool is really cool. We especially like that it really looks like an opera hall. The problem is that without the tool, you're not seeing a lot of information because it's all hidden in mouse over pop-ups. And if you just look at the poster, then you will not get that much out of it. And the final 4th place by Erik Antwak and Debajoti Mondal from Saskatchewan. This is again a tool that you can look at, and the tool, it's really cool. Go to the website. We'll put all the links online later. You can really explore everything. But again, just the static image was a bit harder to read. And without the tool, you cannot really get the information. And for the first 3 places, even the static image was very, very good. So as you can see, even the 4th places, they are amazing works. We got really high, yeah, we had really good submissions in total. And it was very tough to agree on a top 3 and then even on a 2nd and a 1st place, but we had to make the decision somehow. So let's move to the top 3. And in 3rd place, we have this layout by Joscha Rutschmann, Max Seemann, Patricia Lehnhardt, Tim Scholl, Mike Fu, Vincent Lafragola, and Sarah Altenkrüger from University of Tübingen. And this layout is again made a bit like an opera hall. You can see that you have the podest in the middle, and then you have all the seats around it where people are sitting. We have color coding by the countries that the performances came from, and we really liked all the information that was added. It's again a tool that you can explore, and you again have a lot of information behind the mouse hover. So if you use this online tool, you get a lot out of it. For the poster, it's very good, but the other two were just slightly better, in our opinion. In 2nd place, we have this submission from Richard Bratt from Uncharted Software. Now, if you just look at this small picture, it doesn't do the whole thing justice. If you look at the large poster, there's so much information you can read from this. There's a lot of text outside that gives even more information to you. It has a nice use of colors. The south to north palette you can read from here. That's actually based on the countries, on the cities where they are on the map. And we really like the idea to represent everything. You have for every librettist, you have a curve that goes from the left to the right, and that ends at the same spot as it started. And you have all these interactions in between where you can read a lot of data from. And again, this is a tool. You have the link here. You can explore it online. This is something that many people like to do this year. And in the first place, we have, again, a submission with an online tool. And it is by Thomas Depian, Michael Huber, and Wilhelm Banecek from TU Wien. Again, you have the link here. We will put it also online. And this, even just looking at it without knowing anything, this just looks like art. And it takes a while to read the stuff from it. So you have many color encodings again, but this time they are just by country. And following stuff takes a bit, but once you get the idea of the drawing, once you look at it for a few minutes, you really start getting into it. And you see stuff that you couldn't see in the beginning, and you see many interactions. You see, okay, so these parts of Italy prefer to this composer, these parts prefer this. Mozart was not anywhere in Italy, it was only in Germany, and there's so much stuff you can read from it that you cannot otherwise by just looking at the data. So this was a really great submission. Thank you all for these very high quality submissions. We're very happy, and as I said, it was very tough to get a decision here. Let's move to the live challenge. The topic this year was the same as last year, the planar polyline edge length ratio on a fixed grid. So the input was a graph and a fixed grid size and a maximum number of bands you were allowed to use per edge. And your output should be some planar polyline drawing with the vertices and the bands on the grid. It, of course, must be a proper drawing, so you're not allowed to have any overlaps, and it has to be planar, so you can also not have any crossings. And the objective was to minimize the edge length ratio. So the length of the longest edge divided by the length of the shortest edge. Well, at least that was the topic last year. And we had this example here. If you look at that, then the longest edge here has length 3. The shortest edge has length 2. But you can improve this layout by just making this edge in the middle longer. And now this has length 2 square root of 2. And this improves the edge length ratio, although the layout got much worse. So we want to get rid of this cheating that you just put bands very far away to make the distance larger between vertices that are very close. So instead, this year we decided to change the objective function a bit, and now we use in the denominator the minimum Euclidean distance between adjacent vertices. And that means that here the ratio remains 1.5, the same as in the previous picture, but you can get a better drawing like this. There the ratio is 1.12. Here's some photos from here. We have, like I said, we put the top 5 of the Opera network and the top 1 from the aesthetic experience on posters here. And there were a few people here working on the contest. In particular, I saw 3 completely local groups. We put the scoreboard live on the screen, and you can see the local groups hard working with some very impressive ideas how to use the mouse on the seat right next to you, and some trying to draw with their fingers on the screen, which did not really work, I think. Let's have a look at the graphs for the manual category. There were 6 graphs, and all of those were also used in the automatic category. The first graph, where we show you here on the left the input, that had a ratio of 7.78. That's a graph rectilinear embedded on a grid. It's the same idea as we had last year, but we changed the parameters a bit. And the best manual submission here is from team Kunerinashi with a ratio of 1.08, so almost perfect. And the best automatic submission is by team Omega with an even better edge length ratio of 1.03, as you can see here on the right. The second graph, that was the subgraph of a triangulation. So we just created some random triangulation, removed some edges, and then we got this. And the best manual submission here was by team Martin Gronemann Memorial Team with a ratio of 1.67. And the best automatic was by team Omega with a ratio of 1.41. And this is something different to the last few years. Usually in the small graphs, the manual submissions were better than the automatic ones. But here so far, team Omega is even better than all those smart people that were trying to do it by hand. Maybe this means that this is not the most intuitive objective function. The third graph, this graph, yeah, I will show you after I show you the best submissions. Kunerinashi again had the best for team manual from the manual with 1.12, and automatic the best was again Omega with a ratio of 1.21. So here actually the manual submission was better, and I think it also looks really pretty. And this is what they got, but the way we created the graph was actually this. So this is a graph with a perfect solution, except this edge here in the middle, that's diagonal, that increases the ratio to 2.8. So maybe the edge length ratio is not the only thing that you should look at to get nice drawings. The fourth graph here, it's again a graph with a perfect solution, except two edges, the one very long diagonal here and the second very long diagonal around it. And this has a ratio of 29. And the best solution by Martin Gronemann Memorial Team with a ratio of 2.24 looks like this. And the best automatic had a ratio of exactly 2 by Team Omega, but looks much more chaotic. Number 5, the input was basically just GDNV with a few extra edges added around it and had a ratio of 18. The best manual submission was by team New Keyboard Who Dis with a ratio of 2.17. And now it starts looking really ugly with all these edges that are very close to each other, such just to get long, short edges. So this is something that's not really aesthetic. And it gets even worse in the automatic submission by Omega with a ratio of 1.27. And the final manual graph was this input here. This is a 3-partite graph with some extra random edges. The best manual submission was by team Kunerinashi with a ratio of 1.92. And the best automatic submission was again by team Omega with a ratio of 1.05. But again, you have many very close edges around here. So let's see who won. As always, we will do it just like a race. These are the 9 different teams that participated. And after the first graph, we saw the best submission was by Kunerinashi, but Martin Gronemann Memorial Team is very close behind. And these 2 teams, they already start getting ahead, but still we have Minimal is Criminal and Greedy Unicorns not too far behind them. In the third graph, team Kunerinashi was really far ahead of everybody. They had a ratio of 1.11. The second best had 2.5. So they start pulling ahead very far. But in the fourth graph, Martin Gronemann Memorial Team gets closer again, with Minimal is Criminal clearly in the third spot. 2 more graphs. The fifth graph, Martin Gronemann Memorial Team was much better than Kunerinashi. So they are now clearly ahead, but New Keyboard Who Dis gets much closer. So let's see what happens after the last graph. Okay, so New Keyboard Who Dis was much better than Minimal is Criminal. So congratulations to Anaïs Villedieu, Jules Worms, and Sören Tertiades, who defended their third place from last year. Congratulations to you. But for the first place, I think we have to ask the VAR because this is so close that I cannot see it. So let's zoom in a bit and ask the VAR to put the lines. And we see that Martin Gronemann Memorial Team is slightly ahead. So in second place, the winners from last year, Kuneri Nashi, Felix Klesen, and Johannes Zink, at least half of the winners from last year. Congratulations. And in first place, the team that got second place last year, Martin Gronemann Memorial Team, Fule Arguello and Henry Förster without Martin Gronemann. Congratulations. Let's go back to the automatic category. There were 7 more graphs that were much larger, and the input for almost all of them looked like this, because yeah, we didn't give you a drawing. We just put everything at the origin. So I will show you instead how we generated the graph that looks like this. This is again a graph that was rectilinearly embedded on the grid. And the best automatic solution is again by Team Omega. This is starting to get a bit boring. So let's have a look at the second best solution that was by L ratio. Graph number 8 is again a subgraph of a triangulation, just much larger. The best automatic submission by Team Omega. And the third best was by golden ratio. This somehow looks like a star. But again, everything is so large that it's hard to see. But it's interesting that you have these very long edges around here, but a big cluster down here, and you still get a not too bad ratio. Here we have a perfect solution. So there is a solution with ratio 1. And the best that Team Omega could find was 8.92. And the third best was Team hoping for 2-digit ratios, which was still a 2-digit ratio, but it was close. For the 10th graph, we actually gave you a drawing because here we made the grid so small that it's not so easy to even get any planar drawing that looks like this. But you have this very long diagonal here, so this is not very good. And the best automatic submission was by Team Omega that gave us this beautiful drawing. And actually, the second best submission was by Team TOW ELR1. And maybe you can see they just submitted the input graph. But 2 teams didn't submit anything, so it was a smart idea to just submit what we gave you. At least nobody submitted something worse that had also happened before in some years. Graph number 11, you can see here, it's a cross of vertices. This looks very nice, but doesn't have a good ratio. And here, Team Omega did not win. Here, Team Golden Ratio, they broke the chain. They got a ratio of 42.49, while Team Omega only got a ratio of 105. Graph number 12, this is again a 3-partite graph, the best submission by Team Omega, ratio of almost 4, and the second best with a ratio of 122. So here you can see there's really a huge gap between the solutions. And the final graph looks like this. This is some robot. And the best solution we got by Team Omega was this graph, just a ratio of almost 100, but you cannot see anything of the structure of the graph anymore that used to exist. So let's try to find out who won. I guess the winner is pretty obvious, but still the fight for second place is very close. We had 6 teams in total. In the beginning, Team Omega was not that much better. So we see Team TOW ELR1 in second place at the moment and hoping for 2-digit ratios in third. Omega pulls very far ahead, but TOW is also far ahead of the rest. But for the third place, it's still pretty close up here. So let's see what happens for the final 4 graphs. Hoping for 2-digit ratios. gets a bit further ahead, but now golden ratio. This is the graph where they got the best solution, and that pushed them above, hoping for 2-digit ratios. There's one more graph, and they can defend the third spot. So congratulations to Andreas Christalidis, Leonid Darovskik, and Manuel Bacher from TU Wien, Team Golden Ratio, to the third place. Congratulations to Alexander Dobler, Oliver Pilica, and Sebastian Uhl, Team TUW ELR1, for second place, also from TU Wien. And the winning team by a landslide victory, Team Omega, which is Lorraine Moalik, Dominique Schmidt, and Julien Bianchetti from France. I don't remember the city, sorry. All of the winners will be contacted by Takayushi, and then you will get a fantastic prize. So, to conclude, let's announce what happens during the next year. We have now had 2 years where we had one creative topic with almost no submissions. Last year we had 0. This year we had just 1. So we decided for next year that we will only use a single creative topic. And then we will see how the number of submissions will change within the next year. But for now, we will only do a single one so that we don't run into this problem anymore. And the graph that we decided on for next year is a rather small one. And it's about the top 50 board games from boardgamegeek.com, from this website. Some of you might know it. And for each game in the top 50, we create a note. And if you look on this website, you can also click on fans also like. That gives you a recommendation of other games. And that's how we create the graph. We take the top 50 and we take a directed edge if fans of one game also like the other. Some edges are bidirectional, but some are not. And this is what a very quick, ugly visualization of the graph looks like, but I'm sure that you can all do much better. We had some metadata, the publication year, categories, min-max players, design, the rating. You can be free to use anything you want, but you don't have to use all of them. You probably should not use all of them because then you cannot read anything. So decide what kind of metadata you want. It's mainly about the drawing of the graph. One more thing, you saw today that of the 8 submissions for the Opera network, 5 of them were an online tool. And those tools are really amazing. But to be able to objectively or a little bit objectively judge between tools and static posters, next year we will only judge the static poster that you send us. So we still encourage you to use tools, to put them online because they're amazing, but just for better comparability, we will only look at the posters for the decision who gets the top 3. We have a new topic for the live challenge next year. And the topic we decided on is crossing minimization again, but this time with point set embeddings. So the input is a graph and a point set. There can be more points than vertices, for example, this graph and 5 points that are on the grid. And now you want to draw the graph with the vertices on the point set in such a way that you minimize the crossings. So this is obviously not minimal, but if we take this, then this works. And these point sets, they don't, Yes, a straight line. And these points, they don't have to lie in general position. So it could be that a point lies here and this is still a valid layout. You can go through the points, but of course you could not put another vertex on this point here. So this is just the positions where you can place the vertices. 3 more small announcements about the committee. First, we have a new committee member you maybe already saw on the first slide, Fabian Klute from Utrecht University. Thank you for joining us, getting some new young blood into the group. Welcome. But we want to add another committee member, and we decided that we will try to have a call for the first time instead of asking people. So if anybody is interested in joining the contest committee, these are a small overview of what you have to do. You have to select and prepare and evaluate the creative topics every year. We have to run the live challenge, which changes the topic every 2 years, which includes updating the online tool every year so that it works for the new challenge. You should bring new ideas to the contest that it doesn't get stale. And we expect you to be in the committee for about 4 years. So every year we want to rotate one member so that there's always a rotation, but also always people that know how everything works. So if you're interested, just send us an email until end of the month to gdnvcontest@gmail.com. And if we get good candidates, then we can find a committee member this way instead of just deciding who we like and who we don't. And a final announcement. I've been the chair of the committee now for 4 years, and I've been in the committee for 8 years. So it's time for me to slowly fade out. That means that this is the last day for me that I'm the committee chair. And starting from tomorrow, the new chair of the contest committee will be Wouter Meulemans. Thank you for doing this. And after making sure that the transition works next year, I will completely drop out of the committee. Follow us on Twitter for more updates. Then there we will also again post all the results and all the winners. And we will post when all the data is online. The data for the creative topic should be online very soon. We're almost done already compared to this year. Thank you all for participating. It was a great time. I hope you enjoyed it. And soon I can participate again.
Let's give a big